This video will look at how to disable IPv6 on an Elio VM, which may help to reduce network overhead or increase VDI performance if disabled. IPv6 is not currently used or required for existing functionality within Elio. However, it is recommended to check with your network engineers to see whether IPv6 is used elsewhere in the virtual infrastructure to see if this procedure should be taken. To disable IPv6 on an Elio controller for an active session, open a console session and log into the Elio controller. Default user login credentials are power user. Type ifconfig or IP-ADDR to verify if IPv6 is currently enabled on a NIC adapters. IPv6 settings can be verified by typing sysctl -a pipe grep net.ipv6 . Type cd /proc /sys /net /ipv6 /conf /all to change directories, followed by the ls command to list the contents of the directory. There should be a disable_IPv6 file. Type cat disable_IPv6 to output the contents of this file. A value of 0 indicates that IPv6 is enabled, and a value of 1 indicates that IPv6 is disabled. Check the existing settings prior to making a change. Type echo /1 right caret /proc /sys /net /ipv6 /conf /all disable_IPv6 to overwrite the existing value and disable IPv6. Verify that IPv6 is disabled. Please note that this process is not persistent upon an Elio controller reboot. If you want to disable IPv6 on an Elio controller and have the settings persist upon an Elio controller reboot, there are two options that can be used. First, type cd /etc /modprobe.d followed by ls to list the contents of this directory. There are two files that can be used for one of the two options to persistently disable IPv6. Those files are aliases and blacklist. For option number 1, type cp aliases.back to create a backup of this file. Next, type vi aliases. Locate and scroll down to the line that displays alias net-pf-10 IPv6 off. Press the Insert key to place the text editor into insert mode. Add a new line above the IPv6 off line. Type a hash mark followed by a description of the existing setting should the setting need to be restored later. Place a hash mark at the beginning of the net-pf-10 IPv6 off line to comment out the line. Then create a new line Type a hash mark followed by a description of the new setting. Add the following 2 lines. Alias space net-pf-10 space off. And alias space IPv6 space off. Press the escape key to exit the text editor's insert mode. Type :WQ exclamation mark to save the settings of the file. IPv6 will still be enabled at this point, although will be disabled upon an Elio controller reboot. You can monitor IPv6 traffic from various sources on the Elio controller by typing one of the following 2 commands. 1. TCP dump space -I space ETH0 space -VV space IP6. Or 2. TCP dump space -I space ETH0 space pipe space grep space apostrophe capital IP6 apostrophe. Type cd space /proc/sys/net followed by the ls command to list the contents of this directory, where you will see that the IPv6 directory is now missing due to the recent changes to disable IPv6 on the Elio controller, with the IPv6 modules not having been loaded. I'll re-enable the original settings by typing cp space aliases.back space aliases. Verify the settings, then reboot the Elio controller and again verify that IPv6 is enabled after the Elio controller restart. Option 2, which is what I would recommend, would be to create a backup of the /etc/modprobe.d/blacklist file, then edit the file in the directory by typing vi space blacklist. Page down to the end of the file. Press the Insert key to place the text editor into insert mode. Add a new line starting with a hash and a description of the change to disable IPv6. On the following line, type blacklist space IPv6, which will prevent the IPv6 modules from loading upon an Elio controller restart. Press the escape key to exit the text editor's insert mode, then type :WQ exclamation mark to save the settings of the file. Verify the settings prior to and post an Elio controller restart, whereby the settings should disable IPv6 and be persistent upon the Elio controller reboot. To revert the changes, change directories to /etc/modprobe.d. Copy the blacklist.back file to blacklist. Remove the backup files if required by typing rm --R followed by the file name. Reboot the Elio controller and verify that IPv6 is enabled. For Elio Center, which is the web management appliance to monitor Elio controller's health status, a different process will be used. Open a console session and log into the Elio Center VM. Default user credentials are root, admin. Verify that IPv6 is enabled by default. If required, monitor existing IPv traffic using the TCP dump commands previously noted. Verify that the /proc/sys/net/IPv6 folder exists prior to making changes to disable IPv6. Cat the existing value of /proc/sys/net/all/disable_IPv6. Type echo space 1 space right caret space /proc/sys/net/all/disable_IPv6 to change the default settings and disable IPv6. Verify the IPv6 settings prior to and after an Elio Center reboot where IPv6 settings will not be persistent and be restored. To disable IPv6 settings on an Elio Center VM and have the settings persist upon a reboot, type vi space /etc/rc.local. There are not any default configurations in this file. Press the Insert key to enter insert mode in a text editor. Scroll down and add a new line starting with a hash and followed by a description of the new change to disable IPv6. On the following line, type echo space 1 space right caret space /proc/sys/net/all/disable_IPv6. Press the Escape key to exit the text editor's insert mode, followed by :WQ! To save the settings of the file. Verify IPv6 settings pre and post an Elio Center restart. To revert the changes to the default, edit the /etc/rc.local file and delete the IPv6 lines. Save the settings of the file, then type echo space 0 space right caret space /proc /sys /net /IPv6 /conf /all /disable _IPv6 or restart the Elio Center VM. Check with your network engineers to see if IPv6 needs to be disabled on end-user VMs or elsewhere in the virtual infrastructure when performing the above steps. This concludes this video on how to disable or enable IPv6 on an Elio VM.